All right, it's a big episode for us here on the Field of 68 mid-major show. We're going through some brackets. There's a lot of them to go through, so we're going to kind of get to the semifinals and finals of a lot of them, maybe discuss some sleepers in there because if we went through every single game, it'd probably take like 3 hours. But we're going to go through here and we're going to let Rocco talk a little bit about the format of some of them because some of them can be kind of confusing. And I would say one of the more, it's not super confusing, it's just very different is the Sun Belt because you have four teams opening on Tuesday, this going out on Wednesday, so those games will have already happened. But the top couple seeds are off until the semifinals, so how does that bracket kind of shake out in general?
Yeah, well, yeah, great to be on for another episode, Sean. Yeah, I think the Sun Belt decided to really make it impossible for a Cinderella to make it all the way to the championship game, let alone win the auto bid. And we're calling it the Stairway to Seven because they would have to win 7 games in 7 days. And so those teams are Southern Miss versus Coastal Carolina in the 12-13 game and ULL versus ULM in the 11 versus 14. And so basically how it works is every single day, there's two teams waiting in with a bye. So there's up to quintuple buys for the top two seeds. And then, the third. So basically we have 11 through 14 playing on Tuesday here as we record. The winners will play 9 and 10. Those winners will play 7 and 8. Those winners will play 5 and 6, all the way to till we get to 1 and 2, and that will be the semifinals. Eventually, we'll make it to next Monday, March 10th, a whole week away for the championship game.
Yeah, and some of these teams, I mean, if you're that 11 seed, you're gonna have to keep playing. So they might still be going on a streak if they get there. I don't think that'll happen in this bracket, especially because, I mean, the Sun
Yeah.
Belt's always kind of wild. Anybody can be anybody in this conference year in and year out, and I feel like we kind of saw that this year, especially. That's how we ended up with four teams hanging banners to as Sun Belt regular season champions. That's Arkansas State, Troy, James Madison, and South Alabama. South Alabama being the 1 seed, James Madison being the 2 seed. Those two are off until the semifinals on Sunday. Troy and Arkansas State are off until the quarterfinals on Saturday as the 3 and 4 seeds. So, what do you kind of expect from this bracket? What are you expecting to see in the semifinals? Who's meeting South Alabama and James Madison down there?
Yeah, I mean, I know Marshall's been playing really well down the stretch. And they've got a chance to maybe break through. They're on the same side as Arkansas State though, and that's a tough one to predict because they did beat Arkansas State, but that game was at Marshall, and I think that'd be a pretty good one because Arkansas State we've been talking about all year. They've been they are the most talented team. So if they play at their peak, I think it's their tournament to lose, even though they're coming from the number 4 seed position. But kind of a rough draw for them. They lost to South Alabama as well. The Red Wolves did, so they got to
Both were
get
really
by.
ugly losses too. Like they can make a three
Yeah,
in either of those games.
right. So it really is certainly wide open because even the team with the most talent has already proven they can lose to these types of teams that are around them in the bracket. I've also, I've rested my laurels from the preseason on Troy being the most experienced with Connerway and some of those guys just being there forever. And Scott Cross, always been an underrated coach, got a raw deal at UT Arlington.
No, big time.
And he's got a chip on his shoulder. I do like Troy's draw the best. But another coach I love is Dustin Kearns at App State. They might be seeing each other in that quarterfinal, I guess. So then you get to the semifinals. I know that's what you asked about. James Madison and South Alabama waiting. It's going to be a long layoff by the time they finally play. And I thought that those two were probably the weaker of the two in terms of just chances to win this tournament. Although Preston Spradlin and Richie Riley are amazing coaches, they'll have game plans ready to go. I feel like somebody from either it will be Troy versus Arkansas State directly, or maybe even somebody on a huge run like a Marshall or an App State could get to the championship. So it's pretty wide open from where I'm sitting at.
Yeah, for me, I don't really trust South Alabama because they just have so much variance with that zone they play, and they
Right.
shoot a lot of threes on their own. So with their pretty inconsistent three-point shooting, just 31% from three this year, 46% of their shots come from three. But teams against them, against that zone, teams are shooting 60% of their shots from outside, which is a pretty ridiculous number. Obviously, for Arkansas State, in the first two meetings, that didn't really work out. One ended up only being a 4-point loss, but they just could not make a three in those games. I don't know. Is third time the charm there? I don't know if they can really stop Arkansas State shooting for three straight games like that, because Arkansas State is another team that shoots a lot of threes. Not a great shooting team, but they definitely have some weapons with Taryn Todd and Kobe Julian, who's been inconsistent this year, but he can still do it. Terrence Ford, Joseph Pinion, those guys can really shoot it from the outside. So I think that could end up being a bit of trouble the third time around for South Alabama. So I'm kind of looking at it as Arkansas State gets there against South Alabama, so kind of chalk. And then I think Troy will fall to App State, probably is where I'm leaning there. It could be, I guess it could be App
Could be
State or Texas State.
Texas State.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are
Texas State's playing pretty well too.
yeah,
Yeah.
those are kind of the two I'm looking at because App State, they're not a very good offensive team, but their defense is great. Dustin Kearns is a great coach, so I feel like that's a lot of why I think they can do that. But Texas State, I mean, they have been playing really well. They're a great rebounding team. And with the
Yeah.
way Troy plays, I mean, it's a defensive team. Texas State is a little bit better offensively this year than they've been in recent years. So I think what I'm going to look at here, I'll go Texas State beating App State, getting to play Troy and beating Troy. So I'll have two James Madison against seven Texas State, and then South Alabama against Arkansas State. Arkansas State beating South Alabama. James Madison against Texas State. I like the way James Madison's playing right now too. I mean, Mark Freeman has really found his groove after getting hurt last year at Morehead State. Then they have Eddie Ricks. They have Bryce Lindsey, who's been a big time shooter. Elijah Hutchins Everett. I feel like could kind of be the difference there.
I think Bryce Lindsey, man, he might be the best shooter I saw in person all year
Yeah.
long.
Was
I
that
mean,
in
I saw
Canada?
Mitch. It was in Daytona. They were
Yeah.
down there in that event with UC San Diego, but he had the first round game they played UIC, and he hit like seven in a row, and it's such a beautiful stroke. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can tell he perfects his craft. Between him and Mitch Muscari, I was at
Oh yeah.
Muscari's game. He had 8 threes against Kansas State. Those are probably the two best mid-major shooters or any shooters I saw all year on the road. So that's certainly a weapon you need in a March Madness or conference tournament type of setting. So
Mm-hmm.
keep your eye on him. He's a real X factor.
Yeah, and Xavier Brown, another guy that you just kind of can't sleep on for this JMU team. They just have so many good guards, and I love
Yeah.
guard play. That trio of guards will make a big difference in this one. So I'll have James Madison against Arkansas State. Both those teams shoot a lot of threes. Arkansas State is the worst shooting team by about 3.5%. I am a little bit worried about James Madison's rebounding in that kind of matchup, though, because Arkansas State has some big dudes, Isaiah Nelson, Rayshad Marshall. Those guys could give JMU some problems because they're not a very good defensive rebounding team. But ultimately, I think James Madison, with their guard play, with how good they are at shooting the basketball, I'm going to go with the Dukes to make back-to-back tournaments.
That'd be fascinating, especially for Spradlin to get. He would be there 2 years in a row himself.
Mm,
Two different schools. That would be very impressive. I think for me, just down the stretch, James Madison has not defended well. In fact, they're the worst
no.
defensive team in the month of February per Torvik data. And you called it well with the offensive rebounding at Texas State's number one in the country in February in offensive
Mm-hmm.
rebounding, and Arkansas State is number 3, and Troy's number 22. So we have some really amazing offensive rebounding teams in the league based on size, based on energy and effort. I do think for you to be a great rebounding team consistently, you have to be able to find that energy from within. It doesn't come just naturally, like some of the pure God-given talent out there for other parts of basketball. Rebounding really requires effort, hustle, toughness. So who has the kind of kids that are going to be able to do that? That stacks the deck against Texas State because they're going to have to find that energy 5 times to win the
Yeah.
tournament. But I do think they can win 2 or 3 games for sure. And so I'll pick them to make a little bit of a run, at least get to the Troy game. I'm going to go with Troy versus Arkansas State in the championship. I think That was a tremendous battle in Jonesboro. Troy ended up winning
Hmm.
it, maybe the game of the year in the league. If it wasn't, it was that JMU Texas State final game.
That was wild. Yeah.
It was so wild, and it had a lot of stakes, which was great.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I think if you're in one of those pools where you get more points for taking the higher seed, the obvious pick is Arkansas State as the 4 seed. But I think I'm gonna trust Troy. I think they're just the older, experienced team. I think they really, really want it. They don't have a lot of Arkansas State's got a bunch of players that have a ton of talent. You never know what kind of phone calls they're going to be getting throughout March to transfer next year. More distractions. Hodgson's name is rumored to go other places. Obviously, he's hungry to get to the tournament because if he does get to the tournament, he's probably definitely getting a job somewhere higher. But I just like the stability of Troy and what they've been all about all year. So I'm going to take the Trojans.
Hey, I like it, Troy. That would be a good one. You're going with Troy to win the Sun Belt tournament. I'm going with James Madison. I think any of those top four teams have a very good chance. I think it'll come down to one
Yeah.
of those four. So I think that'll be interesting to see what we get there. But moving on to the Patriot League, this one's interesting too. Also starts on Tuesday with Loyola Maryland and Lehigh, and then Lafayette against Holy Cross. And then in the next round, we have Bucknell against the winner of the 8-9 game, Boston U against Navy, American against Lafayette or Holy Cross, and then Colgate against Army in that 3-6. So what do you kind of expect in there in this one?
Well, I think just high level. I watched the American versus Colgate game. It was on first thing Saturday morning. Thank you CBS Sports Network for doing that. That was some good exposure. All the high major games in the morning for the most part were really bad. So
Yeah, they were terrible. Yeah.
that thing was on my TV all for the full game pretty much. And that that had a lot of stakes on it because American had the chance to clinch the share of the title, which they did, and then they lost the tiebreakers later in the day. That's how they landed as the number 2 seed. But Matt Rogers is the best player in the league, and when that game got tight, and I've seen him do it in other games this year, they have a go-to guy that can really come through, and you can tell how much it means to him to get that school a share of the title. And I think in this tournament, he's going to play with every ounce of effort and energy in his body to get this American Eagles team to the NCAA tournament. And I'm not going to pick against them. So they're going to be my pick eventually. But I also think Lafayette's playing pretty well down the stretch. That it doesn't show in the record, but their numbers are much better. They've had to play a tougher schedule. They're a really good defensive rebounding team, which should help, kind of be one and done possessions on D. I certainly like that. The problem for Lafayette is they got to play American if they beat
Yeah.
Holy Cross later today. But they're a little bit of a sleeper. Also, I will just say, Colgate's down this year, but they still have Matt Langle as the
Yeah.
coach, and they have a lot of pride. So I still think Colgate will be a tough out in this tournament.
And even as like a 10 seed, Holy Cross isn't bad. Like Max Green is a really good
Yeah.
freshman guard. They have a lot of shooting. Like that's a sneaky team if they're able to go win that first game. But again, they have to go and play American in the second round, which I don't think anybody really wants to do in this league right now. Matt Rogers is awesome. You talked about him, gave him all the love. You're a big Matt Rogers guy. But Greg Jones has really come on as a sophomore. I remember watching him throughout the year, but the biggest exposure I got, they played, I think it was when they played Lafayette, like, when was that? Let's see. Might have been mid-January, but he's just very skilled and athletic next to Matt Rogers, and that is a tough duo to stop because Jones can shoot it, he can drive it, he's a good defender, and then with Rogers, he can just take over a game. He can score from the inside, he can pick and pop him, he can shoot it from the outside, and I think there is some storybook ending to a career like Matt Rogers getting to the NCAA tournament. So I think American will end up winning it. Colgate, like you said, I think I have them beating Army, even though that's an Army team I like throughout the year. Josh Scovin's missed the last couple games. He's really big for him. So if he's out, that'll be something to watch. Bucknell, they're good. Noah Williamson is a really good player. Navy's one of the better defenses in the league, and they face Boston there. I'll have it Bucknell against American in the title game, kind of chalk there, but then I'd have American beating them. But hey, you can't ask for much of a better one-on-one duo or a one-on-one matchup than Noah Williamson against Matt Rogers in the title game.
That's true. Yeah, and Bucknell won their last six in a row. One of the things I love about John Griffin III, their head coach, is their willingness to kind of elevate the program. So they went out and they scheduled, and we met all summer about the who they could possibly play. Look at their schedule. They went to Kentucky, they went to Maryland, they went to Gonzaga, they went to Syracuse. They went, they played, they got St. Bonaventure to play them at their place, and they played Richmond. I mean, they played a real schedule that's very uncommon for the Patriot League, which of course is similar to the Ivy League and where it's very academic. These institutions aren't as focused on elevating the basketball brand at that national level. They really want to, play regional games in non-conference, build up some wins, and move into league play. But Bucknell went a whole different direction. I think playing a schedule like that really helps your team. You can find out your flaws really quick when you're playing the Kentuckys and the Gonzagas of the world. And I just give him a ton of credit for doing that. He thought outside of the box. He's an innovative person in general. These guys are smart guys in the Patriot League, and I think it's not only going to pay off for it. Already did pay off for his team. They got the number one seed and a share of the title, but they're executing and playing very well. So they're dangerous. And if Bucknell continues to win, they get every game at home now. So that's a huge deal in a format like this. I just think with Navy, you have Navy got swept by Bucknell. Both games were pretty good games, but you do have Austin Benini there still. He's only a
Oh yeah,
junior. He's
baller.
a baller. So they might have some upside, but they're going to have to beat Boston U on the road first. And I don't think anybody won at Boston U all year. And the interesting thing about Boston U is they also couldn't win any road games. So
They ended the year with
yeah,
one, I think, right?
what's that?
They ended their last game was a road win, I
Yeah,
think.
they ruined it.
Yeah.
They ruined it with that win. Yeah, they could have had a perfect record on both sides.
I don't know why they had to
9-0
do
at
that.
home. Oh man, pretty funny. So yeah, I think Bucknell's gonna get tested. I agree, Bucknell American. I just think American's gonna fight tooth and nail in that game, even though it'll be on the road, and American gets to March Madness.
Yeah, I think that'll be a very low scoring game, but the two big men are going to be fun to watch. Now let's move on to the Horizon League. This one's interesting. Robert Morris is the one seed, which I don't think very many people saw even a month and a half ago. Youngstown State, 4-5. Milwaukee, they'll play the winner of Oakland Green Bay. And then Northern Kentucky, Detroit Mercy. The winner there will meet Cleveland State. So it's a pretty interesting bracket. In the preseason, I definitely had Purdue Fort Wayne taking the crown, but they cannot defend, they cannot rebound, so that's a big problem for them. But they do have the guards to really go on a run here with Jalen Jackson, Rasheed Bello. They have a lot of pieces there for the Mastodons. But Robert Morris, I mean, they have just been so impressive lately. Alvaro Fulgaris ends up winning Conference Player of the Year, very well deserved. And Andy Toole ends up winning Head Coach of the Year in the Horizon League. If you look at what Robert Morris has done, they are on a 7-game winning streak. Does that continue in the conference tournament, you think?
It's hard to pick against them at this point. I mean, they've just been so steady for the last 6 weeks or so. And everything you look for, whether it's offensive rebounding, defense, all the different numbers there, they're one of the best, if not the best, in the conference. So there's no warning signs really. That's the interesting thing. But we know how crazy this tournament can get, and usually is. They only get the one home game in the quarterfinals, and then once you get to the semis, everybody's flying to Indianapolis. So it's going to be true neutral court action at Farmers Insurance, unless of course our boys IU Indy make a upset run to get there. But otherwise, yeah, it's kind of a crapshoot usually when they get to Indy. Northern Kentucky finished 5-1, I think, as the 7 seed. They are the deep sleeper that I've got my eye on, and Darren Horn every year. By the time we get to this time of year, has his guys dialed in. So I think they're a dangerous team.
Yeah, I agree. They have some really good guard play too. Trey Robinson, Sam Benson, Josh Dilling, and Dan Goretzker, who's randomly went off for like 3 20-point games and then a bunch of single-digit games besides that. So it'll be pretty interesting to see if the Norse have. I think I'm with you there. If there's a deep sleeper, it's probably them. I like Milwaukee a lot. I think they'll end up making a bit of a run here. I think they could get to probably I think they could get to the championship game. To be honest with you, I think they could win that side of the bracket because Cleveland State, their offense, they've been a better offense in conference play, but they just play slow. They're going to really drag this game out. I feel like they're a great defensive team. They force a lot of turnovers. They pressure a lot, but they don't rebound the ball well, and that's going to be a real problem against a team like Milwaukee, who's the second best offensive rebounding team in the country, only behind Texas A&M. We talked to JaMychal Stillwell a couple of months ago. He's the main culprit for why they're so good at offensive rebounding, but everybody on that team plays really hard. Thamus Folks, another guard who's really good for Milwaukee. Ultimately, though, I have it as Milwaukee making a run at the title game against Robert Morris, and I don't think Milwaukee does enough. They're too similar to Robert Morris, and Robert Morris has more talent from top to bottom, so I'm going to go with Robert Morris there in the title game. It's a little chalky again, but I think Robert Morris with Fulgaris, with Cam Woods, who's really come on, Josh Omajafo, Amarian Dixon, all those guys have been just awesome during conference play. I don't think that's going to change, but Milwaukee's a really good team too, so it wouldn't surprise me if they ended up taking it.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I had Milwaukee winning it preseason. I like all their pieces. I just not sold on their willingness to defend in certain games. They've they've not really defended that well down the stretch, coming in like 244th in the country. Whereas Robert Morris is one of the few teams that's shown interest in defending possession by possession in this league. Most of the defenses in this league is not very good.
No.
Um, and then the other team, like you just this should be obvious if you've been paying attention at all over the years, but you can never count out a Greg Campy Oakland team. Um, and I know that their stats aren't great this year. They're coming in as a 6 seed. They might get another big test from Green Bay. They had a wild finale where Oakland
Yeah.
won in overtime. But I think if Oakland gets by Green Bay, they get that game at home here on Tuesday. They're going to be at that point, all the expectations will be gone. They'll be playing with house money, and any Greg Campy team playing with house money is always dangerous. So we'll see what their matchup is because this is a league where they reseed every round. So if there's any upsets tonight or in the quarters, it will change up the next round's matchups. So it's so unpredictable. And I would just say expect the unexpected. And going in, we just don't know where that's going to come from. But I would say Robert Morris over Milwaukee. I'll agree with Sean for the prediction, but stay on the edge of your seat here.
Yeah, I think Oakland could be a decent call there too. They just haven't shot it well all year, but you never know what can happen. Malcolm Christie could get hot, DQ Cole could get hot, but Alan Mukeba has been just unstoppable in league play.
And it's also all those junk zones,
Hmm.
like Greg Campy's got a big variety of defenses he can go to, and I know he saves his best for postseason play. So just watch out because you might see a team go like 1 for 20 from three against Oakland and lose like 54-50.
I mean, just look at what they did in the Diamond Head Classic. I don't remember what their record was.
Yeah,
They may have only
exactly.
won one game, but they could have easily won every single game they played in that tournament. So in a
They could have
tournament
won the
setting
whole thing.
again, yeah, in a tournament
Yep,
setting again, who's to say that Greg Campy can't pull off a little magic like he did last year? But the next league's not nearly as exciting. It's the Ohio Valley. Again, not nearly as
says
exciting. Not a,
who?
yeah, I think it says just about everybody. But yeah, this league, I mean, there's some good teams here. I'm not gonna act like it's completely terrible, but they're a bottom five league in the country for a reason. Dropping from the Horizon to the OVC is kind of tough, but there is some teams here with some intrigue. Tennessee Tech meets UT Martin on Wednesday. Lindenwood against Morehead State. Morehead State down to a 7 seed. Feel like a kind of dangerous 7 seed though. And then the first buys are to 4 seed Little Rock and 3 seed Tennessee State. And then already sitting down there until Friday is 1 seed SEMO and 2 seed SIU Edwardsville. So what do you think's going to come from the OVC?
Yeah, it's tough to say. This league's been all over the place throughout the year, but SEMO did finish strong. Then once they clinched, of course, they laid an egg against EIU, even though EIU was just playing for pride. So I'm not going to take that result too harshly. Rob Martin and Teddy Washington have performed like all conference players for SEMO. I've always liked Brad Korn. He's had a couple down years where they just didn't have any talent, but I think they've got pieces and they've got a group that really has come together late. That game against SIUE to clinch the championship had a lot of high stakes in it, and they went to SIUE and buried them, beat them by double digits. So I like where SEMO's at overall. Tennessee State's got some upside. I know there's some talent there. They've done a nice job to get into the 3 seed position. They finished 4-2. They're actually defending fairly well. And, we'll see if Tennessee State can produce some magic. That would be a nice wild card team that's really been kind of stuck in the middle of this conference for a long time. Moorhead really crashed and burned in the month of February. I think they only won 1 game in the entire month.
Yeah, they were
That's been
9-3 at one point in conference play, and they finished 10-10.
They finished 10-10, yeah. So, and Little Rock was hot for a while, and then they finished ice cold as well. I'm looking at SEMO. I'm looking at Tennessee State, and I guess I'll say that's going to be the championship. I want to give Tennessee State some love, but I'm all in on SEMO at this point. I know it sounds chalky.
No, I get it. I mean, when you look at pretty much everybody in this conference just struggling terribly besides SEMO, that is a very smart pick, especially because SEMO just dominated a lot of these teams. Like, most of their wins in late January and February were by double digits. But I'm curious to see what that loss against Eastern Illinois means to them, if it meant anything. Maybe it doesn't. But I wonder if that'll have any carryover effect into the conference tournament. But the thing about the OVC is a lot of these teams are really good defensively, and most of them can't score. So we're going to see some really low-scoring games in this conference tournament. I'm going to go with the team who hasn't been super hot, but I've been on them all year long. I love their talent. They are the most talented team in this league, I would say, and that's going to be Little Rock. You look at what they have. Jonathan Lawson is a big-time player. He's had some crazy moments. He's had some game winners. He's shooting 42% from 3. But this Little Rock team, what they do so well is defend. They're a top 100 defense in college basketball, which for a team in the OVC is pretty impressive. They hold teams to 45% effective field goal percentage, which is 14th nationally. They force turnovers 21% of the time, 19th nationally. Like, this is a truly elite defense. It just comes down to, can they score? And they need Jonathan Lawson to go off. They need Mawani Wilkinson to go off, but they really need their guards to start playing well, and that's Isaiah Lewis and Jordan Jefferson. If those two play well with Wilkinson and Lawson, then I think Little Rock has a really good chance to make a run here. So I'm going to go Little Rock to win the OVC title.
Yeah, I mean, if they can find that defense again, I would be right there with you. But since February 13th, their defense has fallen apart a little bit. Going 93-92 with Lindenwood on February 20th in overtime, a loss where they allowed 90 plus.
A game they should have won, by the way. That was the game Reggie Bass got fouled from 3.
Okay.
I was watching this. He got not that their
Nice.
defense was good in this game, but he got fouled from 3. And it was clearly on the floor, and they called it a shooting foul. So he got 3 free throws, and they won the game. That was to win the game. It was honestly one of the worst calls I've seen. So Little Rock got screwed there a little bit. But you're right, their defense hasn't been what it was. But I could see it returning to form.
Right. Yeah. No, well, I just think it's not Darrell Walker's first rodeo, right? So, so I feel like in a lot of these leagues, these coaches are pretty crafty with, I don't want to say sandbagging, but that's probably the best word I can come up with at the end of the year, because they want to save their cards. If you're in a one bid only league and you're going to have to play the same teams, again next week, or, in a couple of weeks when it's really for everything on the line, why would you show your best defenses or your best looks or run your best stuff? Why not save it? And I think, I'm not saying Little Rock did that or not, but I think that you're going to see some examples of that throughout.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's like playing a good hand of poker. You want to wait until everything's on the line. If you have that, 1 or 2 defenses that are going to get you the win, you obviously game plan different opponents different ways. So I just love that strategy and scheme part of it. And you can't always look at the last. I'm looking at it right now just to get a feel for how teams are doing momentum wise. But I also would say some of these teams are scheming a little bit to make sure they're at their best for the tournament.
No, that's a really good point, especially in these leagues we talk about, because most of them, except for 2 conferences, the Big West and the Missouri Valley, no chance at getting 2 bids. So it makes sense to kind of.
Yeah, it's all or nothing. Put all your chips in the middle and see what you got.
Yeah, and One of the more interesting leagues to me year in and year out is definitely the Southern Conference. I just always feel like league play is super fun, and it'll be interesting in the conference tournament opening on Friday with 8 seeded Mercer against 9 seeded Western Carolina, and then the two military schools there, number 7 BMI against number 10 the Citadel. Chattanooga gets a 1 seed, UNCG gets a 2 seed, ETSU a 3, Samford 4, Furman 5, and Wofford 6. What do you expect to see from this conference tournament? Chattanooga's been one of the hottest teams in college basketball over the last month, so they're coming in as a favorite and for a good reason.
Yeah, I mean, Chattanooga took the league by storm. They went undefeated in February. It's been awesome to watch. They're shooting the lights out too, so you just kind of in the back of your mind you wonder if they're going to hit any regression coming into the tournament. But beyond that, they got some names that we've known with Hunter Huff and all those guys. Like they're just freaking good. And Dan Earl's a heck of a coach. It's really good, a guy that's been coaching in the SoCon for this is his 10th year between BMI and Chattanooga in the league. First time he's won a league title. And that made me happy because it's impossible to win a league title at BMI.
Yeah, no.
And he's one of the really good guys in the sport. So really good to see and watch out. They're on fire. But I think, yeah, nationally, I think SoCon's one of the great leagues in all of college basketball. Every year, it's quality. You see nowadays, the best players from this league get purged into the SEC and other leagues. But Furman actually, I would say, almost equally as hot as Chattanooga coming in, but they're getting it done defensively, and that's really got me leaning towards the Paladins. Um,
Really?
I I thought for sure they were gonna, just kind of let Wofford enjoy their senior day. Wofford's a team with a lot of seniors. They were some people's pick to win the league preseason because of all the continuity and experience. And Furman went into Wofford and ruined their senior day on Saturday. And they're playing a top 30 defense in the last month. They're doing a great job getting to the foul line and maximizing their own possessions. They don't have the greatest shooters, and they're obviously not one of the great Furman teams either. But they're coming in at the 5 seed, which is fine because Samford's a little cold. We know Buckyball's system. Obviously, whoever wins Samford Furman as a 4-5 winner is going to be really, really dangerous against probably Chattanooga in the semis. So, I'm going to be a little crazy. I'm going to take Furman to win the tournament.
Okay,
Um,
I like it. Hey,
and East Tennessee State was my preseason pick. I think Brooks Savage is a heck of a young coach. He's going places in college basketball. I think they're going to make a run to the finals. I think they did last year too. But I'll go with Furman just because they're playing the better defense right now. But don't be surprised if ETSU takes out Furman if we get that championship game.
yeah, I'm gonna go with ETSU in the title game, but I'm gonna go with Chattanooga getting there and beating ETSU. I do have some concerns about their size. That's the one thing, my one reservation. But that's part of the reason why they're this good offensively is because they've just gone to a super, super small ball lineup a lot of the time with the two small guards, Bonham and Huff, and then Garrison Kieslar is like 6'5", 6'6", Bash Wieland, who's 6'5", and then Frank Champion, who's 6'7", who's like 230, 240. He's just a super, super talented offensive piece, and he's the kind of guy that Dan Earl typically has his teams building around offensively. It was Jake Stevens in the past, Champion smaller, but he's really tough, he's really skilled, and he's a great passer to those shooters, and I think that's allowed them to really find their offensive footing. They are a pretty bad defensive team, call it what it is, 334th in defensive efficiency since February 1st, but they're a top 25 offense in the country. I just think that offense, the way they're playing, the way that they beat teams, even teams with more size, like a UNCG, they beat them pretty good a couple last week. So I think this will be a Chattanooga win. Furman, for me, I like them, but they shoot too many threes for what they are. PJ Smith and Nick Anderson are their only two really good shooters. Tom House can shoot it too, but they shoot threes on over half of their possessions. They're not a very good
Right.
shooting team. So it's a weird formula, but they're a really good defense. But I don't know if that's how you can really beat this Chattanooga team because sometimes great offense can just beat good defense. And ultimately, I think that's what we'll see in that matchup. Samford, I think, could give Chattanooga some trouble because they have that size with Jaden Brownell and Colin Hollowell. But they just dig themselves too deep of a hole. That's been their problem all year long. They just get down 15, expect their turnovers to bail them out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. ETSU, though, I do like a lot. But ultimately, I think Chattanooga, with how hot they are, they're going to keep that going in the conference tournament.
Yeah, I mean, good analysis, I would say. And good call on Furman. They've at part of their run they've made here down the stretch, winning at Samford and winning at Wofford to end the year, mixed in with some home wins. They've been shooting it over 38% in those last 5 games by themselves. Obviously, they could go cold any of these games, and they gotta get through 3 wins to cut down the nets. But yeah, so I can't change my pick now, but I like ETSU quite a bit as well. And Jaden Seymour and those guys are
And I
tremendous
like the
players.
boldness of the Furman pick. This is what this is all about. We can't all just go
Yeah,
chalk
you
here.
can't. Yeah. There's going to be surprises. You got to figure out where they're at.
Yeah, I feel like I've gone kind of a little chalky here, except I did say Eastern Kentucky is winning the ASUN tournament. We don't have to talk about how that's went. We can save that for a later date because it's not gone well. It's currently over already. So we'll move on here to the Big South. This is one that I think is going to be very chalky. I just think High Point's at a different level than everybody else. Do you disagree?
No, this one.
Yeah.
Don't waste your energy trying to figure out something fishy,
This might be
because
the easiest one to pick in my opinion. Like this feels pretty
I think
obvious.
McNeese. I think McNeese will be
That's true.
easier.
Hmm.
But that's because McNeese is playing at home. This tournament actually moved to Johnson City, Tennessee, so we will have the High Point will have to play in a neutral setting, unlike last year. Um, Outside of that, they've just really turned on the gas in the last whatever it's been 5 6 weeks, and not just dominant, but completely dominant. They're winning a lot of these games by 20 plus. We've talked about them all year. The inside, the outside, they have everything. They have a high major roster, and it's going to take almost a perfect game to beat them if you're somebody trying to knock them off in this tournament. I will say Winthrop though. Winthrop's they did just lose to High Point in a road game by 22, but since January 29th, Winthrop hasn't lost otherwise. So they've really found their groove. I saw them bash Longwood in last week, and
Hmm.
that's a rivalry game. And then knocking off UNC Asheville, who is in first place for the first half of the season, by 13. That's a good final taste in the mouth from Winthrop. If we get Winthrop and High Point in the championship, it could be a pretty good game.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this one will go because Radford and Presbyterian, they both look solid at points the last couple of weeks, month.
Yeah, I like Presbyterian. Absolutely.
Presbyterians went on a bit of a roll with Kobe Stewart and Corey Mincy. That's a really good duo for them. So good on them for getting that first round bye. But yeah, they have to face High Point at some point here. The winner of that game in the would that be the semifinals for us on Saturday? Yeah, it'd be the semifinals. And then UNC
Yep.
Asheville against Charleston Southern. There might be some upset appeal there because UNC Asheville has really struggled, and this is a UNC Asheville team I like. But Tajay Kelly is a dude for Charleston Southern. Like he is
Yeah.
an absolute dude. So if he gets hot, anything can happen. But I think I'm with you on Winthrop. I like them a lot. KJ Doucette, Kelton Talfort, who's been there forever, it feels like. So I'll go with Winthrop against High Point in the title game. And I just think High Point, I think they'll win every single game in this conference tournament by double digits. I don't think it's going to be super close.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. Gardner Webb just really fell apart at the end. That's a team I saw play Asheville in person, and I'm not sure what happened there, but they look pretty toast. Upstate has no real talent at all to work with. They'll probably have a different type of roster next year. Marty Richter's rebuilding the program, so High Point's going to have a breeze no matter what. I think to at least the quarters. The Presbyterian thing, I'm with you. They're playing really well,
Yeah.
and that's a great story because they're historically down at the bottom of the league. It's really weird to see a 5 next to their name in this bracket, but we'll take it. Good,
Especially with
congrats.
like a Gardner Webb who's had success. Like Presbyterian just
Yeah,
hasn't had that.
they've switched spots here this year. It's
Hmm.
kind of cool. And they beat Radford on the road just 2 weeks ago, and so that's their opening matchup. So yeah, I'm with you. I'll go Presbyterian, High Point semis, then of course High Point too strong for the Blue Hose, but it'll be good for their program to get to the Big South semis,
Hmm.
and then yeah, Audi shouted out Winthrop, so we basically have the same championship game.
Yeah, High Point. I mean, it's just absurd to look at what they've done. They're 26th in offensive efficiency on Ken Palm, which is ridiculous for any school. But we're talking about a team in the Big South, and like you said, high major roster. They have really, really good resources for this league. Their guard play is awesome. Demarion Williams missed a couple games, but he should. I don't know if he returned for the final game, but it doesn't sound like it's anything super long term. Keza Jiffa, he's obviously a stud. Kamani Hamilton, Bobby Pettiford, they just have so many dudes. I think this High Point team, with how deep they can go, they're going to really be a team that can win this pretty easily. They've held five straight opponents to 72 or fewer points, and that's kind of the difference for them. If they're able to defend, nobody's going to touch them in this conference tournament, and that is what they've done recently. That's why they've been so hot. So High Point on the way to the NCAA tournament. And then we'll move on here to the Northeast Conference. What are you expecting from this league here?
Well, Central Connecticut's having a special year for the NEC level. If you go back to the non-conference effort, that they probably could have won the game, lost by 4, beat St. Joe's right after that. They also beat UMass Lowell. They beat UMass themselves. So this is not a normal NEC team. They have a lot of talent with Jordan Jones, Devin Hay, Jaden Brown, Abdul Momo, and the rest. It's they started slow in league play, 2-2, and they haven't lost since. They've won 12 in a row, and they're head and shoulders the best team. So it's one of those leagues where you would like to kind of see what Central Connecticut can do in March Madness. It'd be really rare because I think almost for sure their floor for seeding would be at 15. So you wouldn't have an NEC team in the playing game
That's
or as a
different, yeah.
yeah, so that'd be kind of nice. And they have, with some upsets, they could actually get up to a 14. So they're the team, no doubt. But in this bracket, you have everybody makes the quarterfinals. There's no buys, and then reseeding each round. So they're playing Lemoyne first. That should not be an issue. Both times they played Lemoyne, it was fairly convincing. They beat them by 9 last week. You have LIU is the team that if anybody's going to be able to realistically compete with CCSU, it's these guys. They beat them earlier in the year at CCSU, which is where the championship would be. It's all campus sites, the lower seed hosts. So LIU finished the year with 6 straight wins. Malachi Davis, great player. Terrell Strickland is still there. So we'll see what the Sharks can do. I thought Rod Strickland, the head coach, did a great job bringing over Gerald Gillian from Chicago State as an assistant. So they're really coaching them up at LIU. I think those are the two teams to talk about. It'll be really hard. I know Wagner plays, and they're coming in the 6th seed. They have a lot of bad record and numbers, but I never write off Wagner because of their style. They're bringing a football game to the basketball court,
And they
and
play so slow too.
they can just really take you out of the game. It's almost like going to the hypnotist and thinking that you can beat the hypnotist. So watch out. Always got to watch out for Wagner. Last year they were in the exact same seed and they won 3 straight road games to cut down the nets. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts.
Yeah, I think Wagner is definitely going to beat St. Francis. I think that's an upset to watch, and then that would put them with the reseeding at facing CCSU, I believe. Unless you think Chicago State's going to beat Long Island, which I certainly don't. So that would leave us with Central
Right.
Connecticut against Wagner, and then Long Island against Fairleigh Dickinson or Stonehill. I'm going to go with Stonehill there. I like the way that they played. They can shoot the ball a lot better than Fairleigh Dickinson can, and Fairleigh Dickinson just hasn't been very good this year. So I think for Stonehill, that would be a pretty interesting story. So I'd give us Stonehill against Long Island and CCSU against Wagner. Then I'd go with CCSU against Long Island, and I'm taking CCSU in that title game. Like you said, their talent level is a bit of a step above everybody else. Jordan Jones is a big time player. Adding Devin Hade was a big difference maker for this team this year. Adding another guard next to Jones who can go get a bucket.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Sean. I'm going to go Central Connecticut over LIU for the title. Very boring, but the games will not be boring.
No, I've noticed that's a trend with me too. I'm being a little too chalky here. I need to go find some upsets. So let's move on to the CAA. I feel like I could find a good upset here as we pull up this bracket. Let's see. Oh, or they're the Coastal now. Forgot about that, not the Colonial. Yeah, this bracket's interesting because there's 14 teams. So kind of how does this bracket just play out in general?
Yeah, so you have the top four got buys to the quarters. Then the early four, 11th through 14th place, it's a 14 team league, have to play the early round to get into the second round. And in the second round, that's where you have your 8-9 game and 7-10, et cetera. So the top four seeds, number one, Towson. Congrats to the Tigers, been tremendous all year. Wilmington lands as the two on the bottom half of the bracket, if you're listening. Number three is Charleston on that side, and then back up with Towson. William and Mary, our guy, Coach Earl,
Yeah,
uh, got,
bye.
got got them into that bye. Yeah, so that's a big deal for them. So they're in striking distance. So those four teams are 3 wins away from cutting down the nets. Everybody else is 4 wins or more away.
Yeah, this one's interesting because even in that first round, like Delaware is not bad. They have some talent for sure. They can shoot the ball. John Camden's a really good player. Isaiah Pasha, their freshman guard, can really play. And like they're the kind of team they don't defend, but they play super fast. They can hit a lot of threes. They're an efficient offense. They can get hot for a couple games. I think they'll beat Stony Brook there unless CJ Luster goes for like 40, and then they'll go and play Campbell. I think that's a good upset candidate because Jason Sinani, he's hurt. So that
Yeah,
Campbell team's,
they
yeah,
haven't been the same at
yeah,
all.
that team's a little bit, they're a 5 seed, but they're not the same. So I think Delaware takes them down. Then it honestly wouldn't surprise me. It's not, this is a neutral site, right?
Yeah, it's in DC, neutral
Yeah.
site. Yep.
So I could see Delaware getting past William and Mary even. So I kind of
Right.
had them winning 3 games here. So they're kind of that underdog for me. But they're not going to beat Towson. That's a little too much for them. Northeastern, Monmouth. Monmouth could be an interesting one with Abdi Bashir. He's probably
Yeah.
the best shooter in the country. He's just been awesome to watch all year. UNC Wilmington, College of Charleston. I think that's kind of the matchup I'm looking for because those teams have kind of went toe to toe throughout the last couple of years, even in the championship game a couple times. But this one wouldn't be in the championship game; it would be in the semifinals if it gets there. So I'm gonna go with that being a semifinal matchup: UNCW against College of Charleston and Towson against Delaware as a 12 seed. Gonna go with Towson in the title game against the College of Charleston. And I think Chris Mack gets it done. I think he gets the College of Charleston Cougars to the NCAA tournament once again. That Towson team's a great story, but at the end of the day, Ante Berzovic is just a different kind of dude. I think he's going to be really tough to stop in general. And Dable Tavares, he's shooting the ball well. He's back. Overall, this Charleston team has a lot of talent. I think coming into the year, they were probably, I think they're picked second. So I'm going to go Charleston here to make a bit of a run in the conference tournament, cut down some nets again.
Yeah, it's a fascinating bracket for sure. And all these teams bring a little bit something different to the table. You know, Elon had a little bit of a run, then they hit a wall. Drexel still plays really good defense, and Coach Spiker's a schemer. They're playing in the 8-9 game. I think the winner of that is going to be able to test Towson right away. You know, on either end, and so that'll be fascinating. And then I think also William and Mary is the great wild card team because they do depend so much analytically from firing 3 balls, and if they're hitting, they're shooting over 51% of their possessions or 3-point shots. If that team gets hot in DC, I mean they're playing fairly close to home. Williamsburg's not too far away.
No
That
Noah
they can.
Collier, though, I'm assuming.
Okay, yeah, so that would be a killer
Because he
ID
hasn't played
looking.
since that injury, and it looked pretty bad. I haven't seen what it was, but it didn't look good.
Yeah, that's not good news, obviously, and I hadn't seen that. I think so. That happened what 9 games ago?
Yeah, it was when we had him on the show. So after the Charleston game, I think that was the Charleston game. Yeah,
That's right.
and they
But since
lost
that
five.
time,
They went 3-5 in their last 8.
three and
Something
five.
like
Yeah,
that.
they had a road win at Elon. They beat Drexel at home without him. So yeah, you're right. They're a little bit limited in their arsenal, but I still think they're a wild card because if they come out and shoot 50% from deep, they're
Yeah.
going to knock somebody off, and that could happen to Towson in the semis. Could happen at any point. And then I think the other team to watch, very intriguing, is the Hampton Pirates. They're the 10 seed. But down the stretch, they've been very feisty. They're the best defensive rebounding team in the league. I saw them play at North Carolina A&T on MLK Day. I like some of their pieces, but I didn't expect them to go on this kind of run. They finished 5-2 down the stretch. They lose a 1-point game at Drexel and a 3-point game at Towson, the league winners. So I like their matchup in the first round against Northeastern to knock down the 7 seed. And then Hampton just popped UNC Wilmington 2 weeks
They did.
ago. And so if they get that rematch, they kind of know the formula. We'll see. I think one of the things about Hampton that's always a little risky to me is Noah Farrakhan. He's going to be chucking shots no matter what.
Could
So
work. Who knows?
if you get good Farrakhan, like Hampton can go to the semis.
Yeah. What a story that
So
would be.
it would be. And I got a feeling something special is going to maybe happen with Monmouth. So I'm going to take Monmouth to get to the finals.
Oh, I
Uh,
like it.
yeah, and it's going to sound kind of lame, but I think Towson's still the safest choice. Obviously, I called their games up in Canada, and I love the toughness of that team. Like when games get tight, they trust each other and they make plays. Tyler Tejada is a game changer, and Williamson's a great number 2. Tarke's there. Like they got a lot of different ways they can go to win games. So I'll Towson over Monmouth in the finals, Hampton in a surprise semifinalist, and William and Mary might flirt with something, but you're right, with the injury they're a little limited.
Chaos in the CAA from Rocco Miller. Let's see what the
Yeah,
Summit League has in store. Omaha, the number 1 seed. Nobody saw that coming in the preseason. I can promise you. Kansas City, I think they were the preseason favorites. They're the 8 seed, playing number 9 Oral Roberts. Just hasn't been the season for the Roos that they would have expected coming off such a good year last year and returning so much. I think that kind of goes to show, though, when you're Kansas City and when you're Wofford returning what you return, a lot of expectations, not a lot of results. So that'll be interesting to see just moving forward as a bit of a case study. But Omaha, I mean, they have a really tough semifinal matchup potentially in front of them with North Dakota State if that gets there, and I think it will. And I think North Dakota State will take them down. Omaha to me, I mean, hey, they've been great. They have a lot of talent, but this North Dakota State team, they've definitely not played up to their ceiling a lot of times, mostly because they can't defend. But this team is going to be really tough to stop with the way they can hit shots. I mean, they shoot a lot of threes. Jackson Money is such a difference maker, and he's just tough to stop. So skilled. They have a lot of shooting around him. To Javis Miller, he's the one guy on the team who really defends. So I think that'll be a big difference maker. But Omaha just doesn't really have anybody that I think can really contain Jackson Money, and maybe they don't need it because they have a lot of scoring options with J.J. White and Markel Sutton, Tony Osborne. They have a lot of guys that can score the basketball. They're a solid defense overall, but I just think North Dakota State is the type of team that can really get them here. So what do you think?
yeah, I think it's interesting. I saw both the Omaha North Dakota State matchups, and Omaha got them both times. I thought
Hmm.
they had a nice game plan in both of them. I think North Dakota State's a very sexy team, of course, with the talent and the superstars and the way they play. And I love Coach Richmond. Like over the years, he's been one of the more strategic coaches that gets his teams ready for the Summit League tournament. And overall, I would say the Dakota teams always have a huge advantage playing in the Pentagon, big crowds for each of the 4 schools, particularly the Bison and the Jackrabbits. As we know, they're usually the ones that win this tournament, one of those two. And it's harder for the outside teams to come in and build momentum. So that will be the big test, I think, for Omaha throughout the tournament. And they'll have to play a Dakota team no matter what in the semis, even if it's South Dakota. So that's a tough break for them, but you probably knew they would have to play one anyway. I will say, yeah, North Dakota State owned South Dakota this year as well. So I'm having a hard time because I thought South Dakota finished the season well. I wanted to take the Coyotes for a surprise finalist, but maybe North Dakota State's just got their number too much. Their shooting variance will be a big factor as well for their chances. I don't really know, but I do expect Omaha to lose in the semis to either one of them. That's kind of my bold pick.
Interesting. I like it.
I I like the 4 or 5 winner to get to the finals because I see it in both cases. And South Dakota has beaten Omaha already, so they've already proven that. Now on the bottom half, Denver finished really strong, and that's how they landed as a 7 after being in last place most of the year. They're playing top 40 level defense nationally in the last couple of weeks. I think the big statement was senior day. They beat South Dakota State by 16, and now they get to play St. Thomas or have to play St. Thomas. St. Thomas, of course, ineligible for the NCAAs, but had a great year. They're very efficient. Johnny Tower, that system. But Denver is bringing the best defense lately to the tournament. So that'll be a really interesting matchup. Denver playing for an interim coach while Jeff Wolbron stepped away, and they've been much better with the interim guy. So we've got so many cool little stories here. Then the last game of the quarterfinals, Sean, is South Dakota State, North Dakota, another Dakota on Dakota game. So you know that will have a lot of passion. I think big picture, no, even though South Dakota State took that blowout loss to Denver, you can kind of throw it away. They were out of the league title hunt. Great win for Denver, but this is an Oscar Clough team. Oscar Clough helped take Washington State to the second round of the NCAAs last year. They have a confident older team that opened the season by beating McNeese. I am going to take the Jackrabbits to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I like it. This is definitely Oscar Clough's world, and we're just living in it at this point because he's a 20 and 15 guy every single night. But there
Yes.
is one thing that isn't really in their favor here, and that's Owen Larson. He's done for the year, suffered a season-ending injury a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago, and that's a 40% three-point shooter. That's their best shooter that will not be suiting up for this one. And I mean, Clough's awesome, but at the end of the day, I'm a North Dakota State guy with this team. There's something about great offenses that can't defend that really ropes me in. So this North Dakota State team just has all the things that I love about a team. If you don't care about defense, I love you. Top 50 in offensive efficiency, that'll do the trick for me. They shoot more threes than anybody in the country. And those two teams, South Dakota State and North Dakota State, split the regular season series. I won't count out St. Thomas either, even though they're not tournament eligible. That's another team that is awesome offensively. They have so many scoring options. They run some good stuff. They also just can't really defend, though. So I think when it comes down to it, they're going to have trouble containing Oscar Clough. They don't have the size to really contend with him down low. I'm going to go with North Dakota State, South Dakota State, North Dakota State taking the NCAA tournament bid, and I'm sure people will be excited to see that because they're a team that can really score it.
Yeah, I mean with Jakari White, Jackson Money, those guys are unbelievable. I think the any idea why Jackson Money missed the last game?
I don't have any idea. I didn't see much about that, but I'm just hoping that he's there. If not, they're not going to win the conference tournament. That much I'll tell
Right,
you.
yeah, yeah. So keep your eye on that, everybody. They don't play till Friday, so we got a few days to figure that out. But I think the North Dakota State, just to remind everybody, they won at Santa Clara, they won at Butler, they beat Utah Valley by 20. Utah Valley's been in charge of the WAC all year, so this is a dangerous team. They also beat Northern Colorado by 12, who's in first. They will be the 1 seed in the Big Sky tournament. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the way all those non-conference results just tell you that they would be an extremely dangerous opening round NCAA tournament opponent for
Yeah, they
a
were
high
down a
need.
lot in that Santa Clara game too.
That
So
was that was Santa Clara's fault, to be honest. But the fact that North Dakota State could just pop 4 straight
a
threes
win's
to
a
get
win.
back in it. Yeah, it's just the what I think the thing about North Dakota State is just the threat. They have a way bigger threat as the number one effective field goal percentage team in the country.
That's
Still to
ridiculous
this
for
day,
yeah. Yeah.
they're number one in the country in field goal percentage. So they take good shots and they make them count. And they make you pay when you make mistakes, and that's how they got back in that Santa Clara game and ultimately won it in overtime.
Yeah, teams who defend, Drake is definitely one of them, and we're going to start off the Missouri Valley preview, of course, with the Drake Bulldogs. We're almost having a much different conversation if that overtime, that late comeback against Missouri State in that overtime period didn't happen, because they're probably in a need to win this conference tournament to make the tournament situation if they lost that one. But they're the 1 seed here. Belmont's a 4, Bradley's a 2, UNI is a 3. Southern Illinois and Indiana State meeting in that first round to play Drake, Illinois State, Missouri State, Murray State, Evansville, UIC against Valpo. I don't see any crazy upsets really happening here. I think one of the top 4 teams will end up winning it. Is that kind of where you're sitting?
So far, I think. Illinois State as the 5.
Yeah.
If Walker he finished a little slow. I talked to some of the guys at Illinois State about this, but if they get him humming again, they could get to the finals. Like I mean, their upside is really high, but they've been Illinois State. The reason why they are the 5 is they just have a really hard time closing out wins in close games. And these Missouri Valley games, so many of them are close games, and nobody's better at closing out close games than the Drake Bulldogs.
No.
5-0 in overtime games. 2 of those overtime games were against the last place team, Missouri State. Of course, the one you mentioned in the finale, but the first one in January also went to overtime. And a big part of that for Drake is because they play. We've talked about them a bunch this year. They play such a slow snail's pace, and they get a little sloppy with it sometimes, which is surprising for such a fundamentally sound team that 4 of the guys all came together from Northwest Missouri. But Bennett Sturts, as you guys know, is the X factor. His super long arms. He can go gadget, rebound the ball. He can do dynamic things with his body control to play in the screen and roll game, and that frees up shooters like Mitch Muscari to make the Bulldogs deadly. So in those games when they're making shots early, they'll just bury you, and then they'll bleed the clock so you can't come back. So that's kind of the formula. But yeah, so I'm not going to pick against Drake, but I do think Belmont is here in the same side of the bracket, number 4 seed. They have a ridiculous shooter in Tyler Lundblade, and he's been setting the world on fire quite a bit. He had starting on February 5th, he made 8 threes against Bradley. Then he made 9 threes against Missouri State. Then he made 7 threes against Valpo. Then he made 6 threes against Southern Illinois. Cooled off a little bit, but lately, like second to last game, Missouri State hit 6 threes again. So you want to talk about an X factor from downtown? It's Mr. Lundblade, a transfer from TCU who didn't even play really
He's a
at all.
walk on.
Yeah, he counts as a walk on. Just wanted to get the chance to play, and now Coach Alexander, a very savvy coach, gets him in, and I think Belmont's playing their best ball. They come in winners of 5 of 7, and I think they've got nothing to lose, everything to gain in this situation. So Drake's got some deadly opponents in their side of the bracket. Southern Illinois improved a lot throughout the year too, if they end up playing them in the quarters. I'll turn it back to you for the bottom half of the bracket.
Yeah, Bradley, I mean, they're the best three-point shooting team in the country, as they have been pretty much all year, 40% from 3, number 1 in the country. Murray State, they've been hugely disappointing. They were number 2 in the preseason. They're here at the 7th seed, not even getting a bye. UIC, I think they could be a bit tough. They beat Drake earlier in the year. They have a lot of size with Philip Scoball and Sasa Siani. They don't really have a true number 1 option, but they do have a lot of options with him, Jordan Mason, Time Freeman. They have a lot of different guys that can score for that UIC team, and they've been sneaky impressive this year. As a 6 seed, I wouldn't really count them out because they have been tough on a lot of teams. They had a rough stretch in there in early February, losing 5 straight, or losing 4 straight, so that put them in a tough spot. But they did beat Drake earlier this year, and that's kind of the formula. They also played Bradley really tough. They played Belmont pretty tough. So this UIC team is not one to sleep on. They have a lot of talent. Coach Eson has done a great job there in his first season, but I think Bradley will advance past Northern Iowa. They'll get to the championship game, and I have a bit of a different top of the bracket. I have Belmont beating Drake and going to the championship game against Bradley, and then I have Bradley beating Belmont in the championship game. I think Belmont right now, they play such a different pace, such a different style than Drake. The offense is 37th in adjusted tempo, and the big difference here is Jonathan Pierre, 6'9", really athletic, can really shoot it, transfer from Memphis, start at the D2 level. I just don't think Drake really has anybody that can stop him, and I think that's going to be a bit of a problem. Daniel Abreu's good, but Jonathan Pierre is a different animal. I think that'll be a really tough matchup for Drake individually, and if this becomes like an 80-point game for Belmont, Drake, I just don't really think can compete with that with the way they play. They don't want that kind of game, so I think Belmont will ultimately be a dangerous team there and take that one. But I have Bradley winning it overall.
Bull pick for sure. Other big story on the bottom of the bracket is Northern Iowa just got Lewis Bond back. That's a huge addition if he can play full strength. Now he's been limited in these first couple games back but that makes Northern Iowa a live candidate to make a run because Leon Bond has just been awesome. Like earlier in the season, one of the best players I saw. He, of course, the game I was at, he dropped 37 on Montana. But them back at full strength is a huge deal. They lost a controversial game to Drake on Ben Jacobson's words, not mine, worst call he's ever seen in his life. So, they're going to be hungry in this event. They've got Jacob Hudson's a senior, Titan Anderson is senior, and Bond is still a young sophomore, but Schweiger's a junior. So they've got some guys that are very hungry. But before they can get to Drake, they would have to play Bradley in the semis. They just got beat pretty handily by Bradley. I don't know, and that had the 2 seed was on the line. I guess I thought I watched the game. I thought Bradley was clearly the better team, but again, Bond is still coming back to full strength. So I'm curious to see maybe in that whoever they play UIC or Valpo, maybe get him rolling a little bit and create a sexy matchup in the semi. But otherwise, I'm with you. Bradley, I think, does get to the final. They're the preseason pick. I think everybody in the Valley wants to see Bradley or somebody else win it so we can get a 2-bid Valley. I'm going to go ahead and take Bradley to win the tournament, but I do think it's going to be against Drake. As much as I like how Belmont's playing and I like the upside of Illinois State, I think the discipline and the overall ability to close out close games gives Drake the edge to at least get a couple wins this week, if not win the whole thing.
All right, moving on to the last couple leagues here. Big Sky, Northern Colorado, the number 1, Montana, the 2, Portland State, the 3. What are you expecting here in a Starch Madness?
It's a tough. This is a real toss-up because Montana and Northern Colorado haven't exactly been dominant. Northern Colorado was for a stretch during the year, and Montana just kind of. I feel like they were more getting hot versus dominating. Even last night against Eastern Washington, home finale, nice national spotlight game for the league. They got in a big hole and had to rally in the second half. So, I don't think it's going to be the Grizz. I'm happy the Grizz got their championship. Travis DeQuire is one of the most underrated coach. He's been there for a long time. He's the all-time winningest coach in Montana history now, which is crazy because their history is like 130 years long. And I think this Portland State team's coming together at the right time. I think they're going to be my surprise pick, Sean.
That's where I'm leaning, actually, yeah. So you have Portland State winning it?
I think so. Yeah, they're by far the best defensive team. They're going to have to win ugly. They don't play that great of offense, but I think that late win they had that was
Against
over
Montana?
Montana.
Yeah, they were down
Yeah, I
10
think
with like 2 minutes left.
it's going to be huge for their confidence. The tournament's taking place in Boise, Idaho, which really doesn't help. I guess maybe Montana's the closest, but I don't think it's really going to necessarily help any of these teams. Idaho State might be one to watch. They've had some bright spots. They ended up winning the Big Spud Trophy, sweeping the Vandals, so they get to keep that for 11 months. But and they did beat Portland State. So looking at the bracket, you've got Portland State is the 3 seed, and they will play Idaho in the first round. I definitely love that for the Vikings. Idaho State gets Montana State. I'm still waiting for Montana State to do something. I think they have some talent there. So I think I have a weird feeling the winner of Idaho State, Montana State is going to play Portland State in the finals.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to go with Northern Colorado against Portland State, and I just don't think Northern Colorado's interior defense is good enough to contain the size with Isaiah Johnson and Trayvon Minot and Hayden Curtis and Terry Miller. They just have too many big dudes, too many options, and I think Portland State's defense will be able to cause a bit of a problem for Northern Colorado. So I'm going to go with Portland State to win the Big Sky tournament, Jace Coburn get into the NCAA tournament. And now on to our last league here, the Southland Conference. I don't think we really have to spend a lot of time here. It's McNeese State.
It's definitely McNeese. They're playing at home. They're head and shoulder. This is David against Goliath in every one of McNeese's games, no matter who they play. The talent gap is that wide. With that being said, I do want to give some of the secondary Southland teams some props, like Lamar, Nichols, Corpus Christi, and Sela. Like I would say those 4. They have some talent there. I think if anybody makes some noise it might be Sela. I just like how together those guys are. They took care of their business at home. They beat McNeese last year. It's in, McNeese is still in their state. There seems to be maybe it's just me, but when Louisiana teams play Louisiana teams, they seem to just get so fired up. Uh, so I would say Sela or Nichols if McNeese is going to have to sweat. I know Northwestern State's the only one on the top half of the bracket, but I just don't think Northwestern State has the horses. It's gonna
No.
that game could get out of hand. But if you see a McNeese Nichols final or a McNeese Sela final, that one could be interesting for a while.
Yeah, maybe like 5 minutes. I don't think it'll be a super long competitive
You're
game. I
probably
just
you're probably
McNeese is
right.
just too good, especially at home. But yeah, that'll kind of do it for my thoughts on the conference tournaments. Anything you got to add here?
No, just enjoy all the action. I mean, we have so much action coming every day from now until Selection Sunday. These next 12 days, it's just going to escalate every single day. So take as much of it in as you can, and don't forget to take a walk outside every once in a while because you're going to be glued to your TV.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody for watching.